All right, next is Kevin Kluge. He's the Director of Conservation and Innovative Water Technologies at the Texas Water Development Board. His division works to ensure a secure water future for the state by assisting Texans with the use of salty water and rainwater, reusable water, storing water underground, and in all cases, using water as efficiently as possible. Kevin has been with the Development Board since 1999. Prior to becoming the Conservation and Innovative Water Technologies Director, he worked with water use estimates, population, and water demand projections and the regional water planning groups. And he's going to be presenting on Texas Water Development Board Conservation 2020 Unmasked.
Okay,
so
thank you.
If you'll go ahead and share your screen, and once I see it, then I'll hop off.
See it now?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Take it away.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here this morning with y'all. I like to think that the masks that we wear in this pandemic time period add a little bit of mystery to our daily lives. You know, like when you're walking down the aisle of the grocery store and you lock eyes with someone on the far end of the aisle and you think, well, maybe that's my neighbor or, you know, friend, and you're not quite sure. You know, there's that air of mystery of who is that behind that mask. And sometimes it's hard to know what's going on behind the mask. But TWDB staff, like utility staff across the state, want folks to know that despite of the pandemic, we're all working hard to save water for Texas. And we want you to know what's going on behind the mask. So while we're working from home, Texas Water Development, a lot going on. And these are some of the activities that I want to tell you about this morning, from water loss audit all the way down to a recent and a new project that's coming up. So the first topic I wanted to talk about is water loss. And Jennifer mentioned this in her presentation just a minute ago. Now, water folks will say that the cheapest future water is the water that you already have. And the most expensive water is water that you've already pumped, treated, and distributed, but neither sell nor use. You get nothing out of that water after all that you put into it. So water loss is a big part of what we do at the Texas Water Development Board in helping water utilities and stakeholders across the state get a handle on water loss. Now, 2020, it will be a big year, and staff are preparing for the 2020 water loss audits coming in starting in January, and then they're due on May 1st of 2021. And I say that's a big year because this is one of those every 5-year submittals where all the water entities in the state, just over 4,000 of them, have to submit a water loss audit. In between that, those 4 years in between, only 700 or so have to submit the water loss audit. So we're going to be collecting a lot of information this spring. Well, one thing to point out is, especially for those who didn't have to submit a water loss audit for 4 years or so, is that required training must accompany the submission of a water loss audit. So you have to be trained to be able to submit that. And we do have a 1-hour training on our website that meets that requirement. And we'll also be doing workshops across the state. Well, not actually across the state. In the past, Water Development Board staff would have these almost like road shows going all across the state, 18, 20 workshops across the state that were always great opportunities to talk with local utilities and provide information regarding how to do water loss audits. But with the COVID, of course, that's not going to work out so well. So our workshops will be virtual. We'll have them online so folks can hop onto those workshops and get the training that they need. Data. We collect a lot of water loss data, as you might imagine. And, and we don't want to just sit on this data. We want to share it for everyone to use. We post this data. The 2019 data is posted on our website currently. It's posted in tabular form all the way down to the water utility, like you see on the slide there. But we also summarize that information up to the county level, or regional water planning area level, or the state level. At the state level, I just had a few images to show you regarding the 2019 numbers. From the 2019 water loss audit, the median water loss per connection per day, that's gallons lost per connection per day, is 40 across the state for all those utilities that responded. And at the regional water planning area level, and I included a small map there on the bottom of the regional water planning areas. Of course, we're in Region C, as Jennifer mentioned. To the right there is a box graph showing the median water loss per connection per day by region. The highest is up on the upper left-hand corner, Region F, with a median water loss of 57 gallons per connection per day. And the lowest is on the bottom right-hand corner, Region J, which is the hill country region from Fredericksburg out to Del Rio, with only 13 gallons per connection per day. I neglected to mention Region F is far west Texas, Odessa, Midland, San Angelo. Region C is on the right-hand side of that box graph with 36.5 gallons per connection per day as the median value. So it's kind of right in the middle. Another way to see that is geographically. Jennifer mentioned that she likes seeing things on maps, so I'm glad that we were able to put some maps in here. This shows that same 2019 data and the water loss per connection per day in gallons geographically. On the left-hand side there, you'll see the statewide map with the circles. The darker the circle, the more water loss, and the larger the circle, the larger volume. It ranges from 0. Yes, there was some water loss audits with 0 water loss. Those are some cases where we probably need to look at the water loss data. And they ranged all the way up to 1,600 gallons per connection per day. But that was really one outlying district that had a lot of construction going on. And so that may be construction losses. Over on the right-hand side is the Region C area with the entities in Region C and their water loss per connection per day. You see that in both cases, there's a good amount of range in water utilities and how much they lose in water. The second major data collection effort that we undertake annually is the Water Conservation Plan Annual Report. Now, entities who have more than 3,300 connections, who have a loan with the board, or have a TCEQ water right of a particular size, have to submit annual reports regarding the implementation of conservation measures related to their conservation plan. Now, these conservation annual reports include information regarding conservation activities and how much they anticipate they're saving, as well as water use per person. And we're able to utilize that information. And currently we have the 2018 data up on our website, but we'll be working to get the 2019 data up there. But we have that data listed tabularly, like the water loss audit. You see in the table below by utility. But we also are able to show historical GPCD, or per person water use. In the upper right-hand corner there, you have a graph of this showing historical per person water use, as well as the goals in the conservation plan. So that information is also all on our website. Similarly, we were able to summarize this data up to the state level and the region level, what have you. And this graph or chart rather here, has a lot of numbers on it, but it provides an overview of per person water use. We list total GPCD, which is all the water used, residential, commercial, institutional, industrial, what have you, in a utility. And we have residential GPCD, water loss GPCD, and then we have a number of other pieces of information further going down. Now, if you look at the total GPCD on that first row, you see that from 2015 to 2019, both the average and the median kind of bounce around, don't have a large decrease, but a slight decrease, it seems. And that's good news, actually. You may think it needs to dramatically go down. But one thing we need to keep in mind is the total GPCD, average total GPCD was actually 162. So there's been a big decrease since 2011. There's been a lot of decrease in water use, both total GPCD and residential. Residential was 105. And there has not been that resurgence once the weather got wet in 2015. So that's good news. So all this information is available on our website. And similar to the water loss audit, we can see this here. Geographically, on the left-hand side, there is the statewide GPCD for those entities that returned an annual report. In 2019, you see there's a big range of total GPCD, the high of 756. But again, remember, this includes industrial or institutional or commercial water use. So some mid-sized or small entities could have very high GPCD, total GPCD, if they have a large water user there. And then region C on the right-hand side also demonstrates that it can be quite a range in total GPCD, depending on the customer base of your utility. The annual report also describes or reports what an entity is doing in terms of conservation measures. This box graph shows in Region C the top best management practices. Unfortunately, the print is a little small in the boxes, but in this case, we can just move our eyeballs a little closer to the screen. I guess that's a benefit of being virtual. Public information is the most common, followed by metering, having a conservation coordinator, system audit and water loss control, conservation pricing, then regulatory enforcement, and then down to landscape irrigation. And again, this information is available on our website. Shifting over to a few other projects, or programs rather, that I wanted to mention. First one is the Texas Raincatcher Awards. The Water Development Board annually presents awards to projects around the state that utilize rainwater harvesting in their operations. And this is the 13th year that we've given these awards out. Back in September, the Water Development Board gave 6 awards and 1 honorable mention to entities across the state. And these entities can range from agricultural to industrial to residential, even the use of bioswales to capture rainwater for beautification of a trail. And there are some great instances of what a city and what a school district can do, as well as a university. So a lot of great information on these different projects. They really illustrate how rainwater harvesting and other conservation measures can really be utilized to build better buildings and build a better Texas to save water in the future. Texas Water Development Board staff also distribute conservation education materials that can be used from anyone around the state. I mentioned a few of these up here. I have some of those images from brochures. We have coloring books, as I mentioned, brochures. All of these can be ordered from the Texas Water Development Board, but water utilities can also get 500 copies of these materials for free every year. So if you just wanted to order some of them, staff are happy to help you and send those to you for free, up to 500 copies of these brochures. One thing to note, we have a long-standing and popular classroom curriculum for 4th and 5th graders called Major Rivers. And you see that up on the upper left-hand corner. That's Major Rivers sitting on his trusty horse, Aquifer. Historically, we've taken orders for these and mailed them out, and we still do that. But now we've placed all those materials online. They can be downloaded for free from anyone who wants to use them and use them in their classrooms. We also still take hard copy orders, so if you want to have a large order of hard copy materials, we can help you with that, but you can also download them for free off the website. So check out all the conservation education materials and let us know how we can help you. I wanted to shift gears here to agricultural water conservation grants. We don't just do municipal. The Water Development Board also does agricultural water conservation, primarily in the form of grants to groundwater conservation districts or universities or other entities. We are able to offer $1.2 million in grants. That's up from $600,000 2 years ago. The legislature increased that amount on how much we can give out in grants, and that's how much we gave out last year. So it's really helped the number of projects and the scope of the projects that we can help support. As you note up there, past projects were equipment cost share or demonstration, irrigation system improvements. And for the applications for this year, well, 2021 rather, that are due in February 10th, 2021, we're trying to focus on soil health. So projects that have soil health components in them may be prioritized, although any type of projects are still eligible. So if you have such projects or you know of such projects that could be funded, feel free to submit an application by February 10th. All right, I just wanted to kind of wrap up my unmasking here with a couple of tools, a recent one, relatively recent one, and a new one. We have here a municipal water conservation planning tool that was put online last year, about this time. This tool is actually an Excel file, Excel workbook, with a lot of worksheets inside of it that are linked together. And what this tool does, it allows water utilities to get an estimate of how much water can be saved from a myriad of different conservation measures and how much it might cost. Now, one of the great things about this tool is that we preloaded the base data into the worksheet for over 460 water utilities that were in the regional water plan. So your utility may already have that base data preloaded, the historical water use and the projections, what have you. That may already be preloaded in the tool, and you can just start playing away with different activities and at different levels and see how much you're saving. If you're not preloaded, it does require some input of base data, but you can do that, still use the tool. So hopefully that will be helpful to anyone who's wanting to actually kind of get some numbers on what could be done. Coming up, and this is one of the things we're pretty excited about in terms of water loss. And Jennifer had mentioned water loss, and I think there's a lot of things going on regarding water loss and trying to get a better handle on that and trying to get a better handle on the data. And this is a project, the contract has recently been executed with Kavanaugh & Associates. And what Kavanaugh & Associates will be doing over the next 6 or 7 months or so will be doing validations, level 1 data validations for 10 water utilities across the state. So they'll be working directly with those water utilities. helping them out, looking at their data, looking at their assessment, and giving them recommendations and information on how to improve their water loss audit data. But in addition to that, besides doing those validations for those 10 utilities, the contractor will be giving the Water Development Board a report that really acts as a roadmap for future validation projects, future pilot studies, what have you, telling us what are the pros and cons, and what were the lessons learned about doing level 1 data validations for utilities across the state. So we're excited about that because we still have hopes of doing more and more as we go forward with water loss audit validations. And that the study ends, we'll get a draft report June 1st of 2021. So we'll be getting that information and getting that out summer, this coming up summer. And with that, that's really what I wanted to let y'all know about, what we're doing at Texas Water Development Board. For more information, I wanted to bring up the contact information for Cameron Turner, who works with the agricultural water conservation, as well as John Sutton, who does the municipal water conservation. So if you have questions or need more information about either of those types of conservation activities, please feel free to give them, send them an email and let them know. Or you're certainly welcome to contact me, and there's my contact information also. So I hope that gives you an idea of what we're doing at the Texas Water Development Board, all the things that's going on, all the things that are available to y'all. And with that, I'll wrap up and let you know that's TWDB Conservation Unmasked.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, we have just had a couple questions come in, and if anyone else has others, be sure and put them in that Q&A tab there on the side. First question: how can a city be chosen as one of the 10 cities for the level 1 audit?
Because of the time frame really of this project, and we kind of need to get this going and moving, we can't unfortunately take volunteers with this smaller private or pilot study. We selected a number of utilities that were based on really their history, if they have data and what have you, and those might need more assistance for this pilot study. So unfortunately, we can't take any volunteers for this one. But as I mentioned, we're hoping to use this pilot study to really build and have a larger pilot study with perhaps 100 pilots. So stay tuned. If you're interested, let John or I know that you're interested, and maybe we can find a way to work in utilities into the next larger study.
Great. Next question: how can cities or utilities help the Water Development Board with conservation progress in the state?
I think one way is, particularly in the conservation annual report, I think one of the ways that utilities can help us is, one, to fill it out, let us know what you're doing, and also to try to do your best to try to give an estimate of savings. And that's been a challenge for annual reports is how much we're actually saving, right, for these different entities. So if you have a good idea of how much you're saving, please share that with us, and we can share that out to others to give an idea how much could be saved.
And the water conservation planning tool has some of that capability. Is that correct, with the estimated savings?
That is. That could be a great tool to make those estimates.
Yeah. So following that, do you know how many utilities have utilized that tool to this point?
That is a good question. I know that some have. I've talked to regional water planning technical consultants, particularly up in Region C, as Jennifer mentioned. I know that utilities have used that up in that area, but I don't know a number. And maybe I can try to find that out and let everyone know.
Okay. Next one. Oh, this is a good one. Are there any Texas legislature topics related to water that we should be following this coming year?
There always does seem to be some water topics. And we certainly have a lot of legislators who are very interested. Representative Lyle Larson, Senator Perry are always very interested in water topics. We'll see just how constrained this legislative session becomes with the COVID precautions and how many bills really can move through the process, through the committee process and so forth. That will be something to keep an eye on. It may just be tough to get any bill through, but I think in terms of topics, desalination, reuse, produced water are always interesting, and groundwater is a perennial interest. But we'll see what conservation activities might catch the eyes of the legislators.
Okay. And this last question, and we do have time for additional questions. If anyone has some, go ahead and put those in the Q&A. But this last one that we have, I may expand a little bit because it's similar to a question I had. Are there any innovations or technologies that you're watching for the future of conservation, or ones that, if widely implemented, would have a great impact on conservation?
Yes, I would. Yes, definitely. And one of those was actually discussed at the recent meeting of the Water Conservation Advisory Council. They were looking at things that they wanted to look at over the next year, and I think it's very, very apropos to look at this. And that's advanced metering infrastructure, or AMI. The smart water meters. More and more cities are looking at these, not just big cities, San Antonio or Lubbock or Dallas, what have you. But even mid-sized cities are looking at installing AMI onto their meters. And that will just give a wealth of information about water use and provide information both to the customers in the utility and particularly for outdoor landscape water use. There's a question to Jennifer on, if you don't, have restrictions, how would you know if anyone's following these? Well, with AMI, that tells you a lot about how customers are following, whether mandatory or suggested restrictions. So I think that would be at the top of the list, the implementation of AMI across the state.
Okay. Last question. Do you have any conservation confessions to share?
Conservation confessions. I guess my only confession, or one that comes to mind, there may be other confessions that I'm not thinking of. Back when I started with the Texas Water Development Board, that was really when regional water planning was starting. A lot of discussion about water planning. A lot of people were getting much more involved in water planning. And there's always the thought about conservation, like, oh yeah, well, conservation is nice, but it's really not going to solve any of our problems. It's just, it's kind of like gravy on top. That's just the frosting on the cake. And I wouldn't say that anymore. You can't just, that statement, you can't solve everything by conservation, or conservation won't do it. I think we've come a long way in terms of conservation and more efficient water use, and can really be utilized to solve a lot of these water problems in the future. So it may not always be possible, may not be accepted, but I think the potential is there. So that's my confession.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and presenting on that. I think right now it's time for a break.